we've decided, we know who we're going to go to, we know what type of setting, whether it's by ourselves, with people. So let's talk about now what's actually going to happen in that session. What type of therapy are you actually going to do? There are kind of two main types. The first is behavior therapy, which relies on the assumption that problematic behavior is a learned association. It's focused on relieving the symptoms the way that they present. So it focuses on changing your bad maladaptive behaviors and changing them into constructive ones instead. And the way they do this, because this is a learned association, is by classical and operant conditioning, which we talked about in our last chapter. So things like rewarding or punishing certain behaviors to eliminate the bad ones, promote the good ones. So for instance, let's say you got a bad grade on your paper. There are a couple different behaviors you might do. You might sulk and stay in bed all day, but that's kind of maladaptive. That's not really helpful for you. You also might look at your paper and edit it and figure out what you did wrong. That is a constructive behavior, something that would help you get out of that cycle and maybe get better scores on your future work. So behavior therapy will help you kind of make the better behavioral choices using things like operant conditioning. There's a specific type of analysis called applied behavior analysis, which is kind of a particular type of behavior therapy where you're observing these behaviors and you're changing behaviors without considering the thoughts or emotions. So simply stated, it reinforces positive behaviors, punishes consequences for negative behaviors, promotes you to do it by yourself. It's very systematic, so you don't get stuck in not knowing what to do next. And it teaches you that you can start small, and small things will lead to big things. So this is behavior therapy. In contrast, you may have heard this, there's also cognitive therapy. So the goal of cognitive is to identify and correct thoughts, distorted thoughts that you might have about yourself, about others, about the world, etc. And they use an approach called cognitive restructuring, which takes that negative thought and replaces it with something that is more realistic or something that is more positive. So for instance, let's say you got a text message. You were like, yeah, can't wait, friend, see you tonight. And they responded back with K. We all hate that, right? So you might initially have the thought, they hate me. They don't want to be my friend anymore. They don't want me to come to their party. Why did they just respond with a K? So that would make you sad. You start to spiral down some distorted thought about yourself or other. Or you might restructure that thought and be more realistic. Okay, maybe they're hosting a party tonight. Maybe they're just getting ready. They're probably not on their phone much. They're probably busy. Maybe they're texting a variety of guests and they don't have time to respond in full. Okay, so it's not me, it's the situation. You replace that thought with a more positive thought. The different types of distorted thoughts that might occur, I like this kind of diagram that depicts some of the most common thought distortions. So thinking things are black and white and not giving yourself a chance to be in the middle. Overgeneralizing things, so seeing a pattern based off one event and thinking it's true for everything. Having a mental filter, so paying attention to only select things, noticing maybe only your failures and not considering your successes. Discounting anything good that happens and only focusing on negative things. Jumping to conclusions, I do that all the time. So trying to imagine that we know what others are thinking or that we know what's going to happen, even if we don't. Magnification, so blowing things out of proportion or minimizing things to make them seem less important. Reasoning with our emotions instead, so because we feel like a certain thing, that it must be true. And then using that word must and should way too much. Using words like putting that pressure on yourself that you should do this or you should be at this level by now or those types of things make you feel guilty. I like therapists who say, like, stop shoulding yourself. Stop telling yourself what you should and shouldn't do. You also label, you assign those terms to yourself or to people, and you're just like, this label stuck to me now. It must be true. And then lastly, taking blame and personalizing everything. I am so guilty of this. Every single thing that happens, you're like, oh man, I clearly messed up. Like that is something that I apologize constantly for things. So cognitive distortion type problem. So these are common things that maybe you notice in your own behavior, things that you do, and can be kind of improved upon using cognitive restructuring. So lastly, because again, why choose one thing or the other when you could do both? So cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, you may have heard of this before, blends both behavior and cognitive therapy strategies. So it's very problem focused, it's very action oriented based off your behavior. And there are a couple different things that CBT uses. So it might advocate journaling, things like relaxed breathing and meditation. This is a pretty common one of, playing out that what if script. If you experience anxiety and you're like spiraling with a, oh no, they're gonna think that I'm crazy and then they're gonna leave me and then no one's gonna be my friend and etc. Be like, okay, so what if that happens? And helps you reflect on that worst case scenario and realize that you're gonna be okay. Identifying your distortions, relaxing, restructuring, etc. So these are different strategies that maybe you've experienced yourself, or I encourage you to delve deeper into if you've got distortions of your own that you want to get better at restructuring. These are different ways you might do that.